Welcome to day 4 of our free 18-day NEET PG high-yield rapid revision crash course. I'm AI, your competitive exam expert, brought to you by Mohammad Nadeem Abbasi. Today is Pathology Day. Cell injury, apoptosis, are tumors के histopathological criteria direct images के साथ examine पूछी जाते हैं. Let's master these visual markers. Subscribe to catch every high-yield slide.
All right, let's just get straight into it. Today's roadmap is packed. We're covering cell death, hypersensitivity reactions, the hallmarks of cancer, and high-yield tumor markers. Master these 4 things, and I promise you'll see a direct boost in your exam scores. But hey, before we do the heavy lifting, I want to throw a quick mock question your way just to get those gears turning. Think about this for a second. Is inflammation present in apoptosis? Just lock your answer in. We're going to come right back to it. Moving right into section 1, cell death, apoptosis versus necrosis. Honestly, knowing exactly how a cell dies is literally the foundation of pathology. Examiners absolutely love testing this contrast, so pay close attention. Apoptosis is like a highly structured, carefully programmed cell suicide. It can be totally normal, physiological stuff, like when embryological webbing disappears so you get actual fingers, or it can be pathological. Visually, its absolute hallmark is a chromatin condensation. And to answer that earlier question, no way. It's cleared by macrophages in a process called efferocytosis, but it does not trigger inflammation. It's completely silent. Necrosis, on the other hand, that's messy. Unregulated cell death, always pathological. Its hallmark is severe cell membrane damage, and it loudly triggers all those classic signs of inflammation you know: tumor, rubor, and dolor. So how does apoptosis actually happen? Let's look at the extrinsic pathway first. You can think of this a lot like the coagulation cascade. It's a membrane-mediated chain reaction. Step 1, a cell, maybe it's infected by a virus, throws up a fast receptor, also known as CD95, on its surface like a red flag. Step 2, a CD8 T lymphocyte patrols by with a matching fast ligand. Once they bind, it triggers the FADD transcription pathway inside the cell, which then activates our executioner enzymes, caspase 8 or 10. Boom. Now contrast that with the intrinsic pathway. This time, the call is coming from inside the cell, usually the mitochondria. A DNA mutation trips sensor proteins like BIM or BAD. This causes the pro-apoptotic proteins, BAX and BAC, to totally outcompete the protective anti-apoptotic protein we call BCL2. With BCL2 overwhelmed, cytochrome C literally leaks right out of the mitochondria into the cytoplasm, and that activates caspase 9. The key takeaway, whether it's extrinsic or intrinsic, they both end in the execution phase, completely shredding the cell's DNA. All right, shifting gears from cellular death to how our immune system can actually turn against us and cause tissue injury. Section 2, mastering hypersensitivity reactions. Look, I need you to take a mental screenshot of this Gell and Coombs classification right now. It is incredibly high yield. Type 1 is your classic immediate allergy. It's driven by IgE, mast cells, and histamine. Think anaphylaxis or asthma. Moving on to type 2, this is cytotoxic. This is where IgG or IgM mistakenly attack your own cells, like what you see in hemolytic anemia or Graves' disease. Then there's type 3. This one is all about immune complexes, antigen-antibody clumps getting physically stuck in tissues, causing lupus or serum sickness. And finally, type 4, which is your delayed response. Actually, let's zoom in on type 4 for just a second. This one is really unique because it's the absolutely only hypersensitivity driven by T cells, not antibodies. Now, the classic delayed type is known as type IVA, which involves CD4 plus Th1 cells. But nowadays, it's actually subdivided into IVB, C, and D based on specific cytokine patterns and participating immune cells. The core mechanism is always the same, though. T cells activate macrophages, and those macrophages chronically secrete cytokines, which eventually leads to major tissue damage. Before we jump into tumors, I want to share a really vital clinical pearl with you. In pathology, the diagnosis is in the pattern. Seriously, do not just blindly memorize lists of facts. Train your eye to recognize the visual and symptomatic patterns. If you do that, answering clinical vignettes becomes almost second nature. Keeping that pattern recognition front of mind, let's transition to what is arguably the most heavily tested chapter in your exams, Section 3, Neoplasia, and the hallmarks of cancer. So what actually makes a cancer cell so dangerous? Well, it essentially acquires a set of mutant superpowers. First, limitless replicative potential. It becomes an anti-ghost cell that just refuses to stop dividing. Second, it evades apoptosis. It completely ignores all those cell death pathways we just talked about. Third, neoangiogenesis. It actively secretes factors to build its very own new blood supply for nutrients. Fourth, it evades the immune response, sometimes using sneaky PD-L1 mutations to literally hide from attacking T cells. And finally, the ultimate danger: tissue invasion and metastasis, spreading through the lymphatics or the bloodstream. Now, examiners love, and I mean love, testing your ability to differentiate Hodgkin from non-Hodgkin lymphoma based on patterns. Hodgkin lymphoma has a very specific pathonomic visual marker, the owl eye Reed-Sternberg cell. You'll see it stain positive for CD15 and CD30. It also spreads contiguously, meaning predictably, marching from one lymph node directly to the next. It also has a classic bimodal age distribution. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma, however, that might show a starry sky pattern, which is classic for the Burkitt subtype. It has variable B-cell origins, and it spreads non-contiguously, making it much more unpredictable and widespread, often with extranodal involvement. Speaking of spreading, here's a truly wild concept: seeding in body cavities. Have you heard of pseudomyxoma peritonei? It's a terminal, stage 4 presentation. It happens when a mucin-secreting tumor, usually originating from the ovary, the appendix, or the colon, ruptures. It completely fills the peritoneal cavity with this thick, jelly-like substance. From a surgical standpoint, it's an absolute nightmare to treat because that mucin literally coats every single organ in the abdomen. Let's bring it home with our final section. Section 4, high-yield tumor markers. Here, we are hunting for the specific chemical footprints that tumors leave behind. These tumor marker pairs are high-yield gold. You absolutely must know them. AFP, or alpha-fetoprotein, points us straight toward yolk sac tumors or hepatocellular carcinoma. In fact, an AFP over 400 suggests HCC in a patient with cirrhosis. CEA is linked to gastrointestinal cancers, and it's highly prognostic. We use it to track if our treatment is actually working. CA125 is tied to epithelial ovarian tumors. But hey, be careful here. Examiners will try to trick you. It is not entirely specific to cancer alone. HCG spikes in choriocarcinoma and germ cell tumors. And S100, that's your go-to marker for tumors of neural crest origin like melanoma and schwannoma. To really lock this in, you've got to rely on this powerful mnemonic. Examiners are completely obsessed with asking which tumors produce calcified plasmoma bodies. Just remember the word PSMMA. P for papillary thyroid carcinoma. S for serous papillary cyst adenocarcinoma of the ovary. M for meningioma. And the last M for malignant mesothelioma. Honestly, write that down right now. It will absolutely save you a point on test day. Let's look at a very specialized immunohistochemistry marker that's been popping up on recent exams. INSM1, or insulinoma-associated protein 1. This is a highly sensitive transcription factor for diagnosing neuroendocrine tumors. But the absolute keyword you need to zero in on in a question stem is intranuclear. It exhibits strictly intranuclear staining, which really sets it apart from other markers that might just stay in the cytoplasm or the cell membrane. Okay, let's wrap this explainer up by testing your pattern recognition with one final clinical vignette. A 27-year-old man presents with a solid cystic testicular mass. Histology reveals an endodermal sinus tumor, which, remember, is just another name for a yolk sac tumor. Based on what we just covered, which specific tumor marker is spiking in his blood right now? Give it a second. If you immediately thought of AFP, you nailed it. You've completely got this. But I want to leave you with a thought for next time. What happens if a patient's AFP is skyrocketing, but their imaging shows absolutely zero mass in the testicles or the liver? Where on earth is the cancer hiding then? Keep utilizing these visual patterns, keep pushing through your revision, and we'll unravel that exact mystery together in our next session.